Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome back to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and Television. My name is Chris Morgan, and I am here with my compatriots, Jonathan Ian Manzur.
Something John Cena. Can't see me. Or something. I don't know.
Scott Thurlow.
And like that, he was gone.
And Stephen Ormosi.
I'm Mr. Cellophane.
And today we are discussing the 2020 release, the Blumhouse version of The Invisible Man, which as far as I know isn't really a remake. I don't know really what it is, except for maybe a light version of Hollow Man. I don't know. Scott, do you have a funny logline for us?
Well, yeah, basically, rich controlling asshole gaslights his girlfriend via being an invisible man.
Sounds about right. Tony Stark is the Invisible Man.
Yeah, that's good.
And Scott, why don't you continue on with the plot?
Yeah, I shall. So Elizabeth Moss plays the girlfriend of a sort of a Jeff Bezos, to steal something from me, like ish character / Tony Stark, as you mentioned. Like he's an optics, on the fringe of the optics industry, and she tries to escape him, and thinks that she does. He sensibly is dead, but she knows that because he's optics genius, has an invisible suit and is messing with her and destroying her life. And she's she's clearly lived her relationship, left her with some trauma and scars from it, and she's just trying to convince her friends as he messes with her life and endangers her and them, and eventually exposes him, has sort of a duel with him, and also his brother is on it because of lawyer / inheritance tax reasons and so forth. So like it's all right. Like it sort of devolves, which I guess we'll like talk out more. But that's pretty much it. And in the end, she uses his own suit against him to make it seem as if he committed suicide. But no, of course it was her, because that's what he did to her, or at least her friends and family previously in the plot. So like that's pretty much it. There's not a lot to it. And I mean, I'm gonna let you guys expand upon it. My score is, I'm looking at an all right 2. I could maybe even go down to a 1. Christopher doing our old like 1.575 kind of shit. Like that's probably what I would give it. Thus rounded up to an all right, like lower end 2 because of that. And because of like many nitpicks I can point out throughout here and there through the whole story. So that's what I'm looking at. What do you guys think?
Isn't Jeff Bezos plus Tony Stark Elon Musk?
I mean, maybe like.
Should
Should I reference him instead?
I'm just saying. I just thought of that when you made the reference. However, this is less a remake of Invisible Man and more a remake of Gaslight. I loved the first act of this film, and I thought it had a lot of promise. And it also had a lot of, I think, elevated intention for a film such as this. And then it kind of moves away from that kind of Hitchcockian feel and cinematography, and kind of
Evolves into a slasher film.
Yeah, it becomes the Hollow Man. And I'm punishing this more because I feel that there were loftier ambitions with this, and it never reached the heights it wanted to. Also, I have to say, the second act particularly, things start speeding up quickly, that it felt like we were missing scenes.
Had pacing issues.
It accelerates way too fast for me in the narrative. And where I would have liked to see a little bit more of a pace involved with it. However, so I'm probably going to give it a 2 because it's an okay film.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a fairly strong 2. I think the narrative makes perfect sense to me and is actually pretty strong. You do get the sense of like, and I'm going to talk about this themes for sure, but like the importance or the thing that this movie wants to convey is like the feeling of kind of feeling like you're like being made to feel by someone else like you're losing your mind, and like I think it portrays that well in the I get what you mean about like there may have been like parts where it sped up too fast or whatever, but I think that the pacing of her like emotional journey was done pretty well, where like she starts like acting crazier and crazier because of things that are making her act like that, which no one else can see, and then that betrays the intentions of this invisible man, like who is mostly an invisible force throughout the entire movie. You don't really see him very much until the very end, and
titular point, but yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly, but like that's precisely why I think it does a pretty good job. I don't think it's enough for a 3, but I think it is deserves a 2 and a pretty strong 2 for me on that. So I'm going to give it a 2.
Just one more thing to add before you go, Chris. Just that, like some of the tonal whiplash, like I felt tonal whiplash like here and there. So that's why, like, also a reason that I'm gonna knock it down, like solidly knock it down a point. So that's all. Good, buddy.
For me, the turning point of this film was the attic scene, because that scene was great except for a couple logic hiccups. Like right away when you see the phone with the pictures on it, it's like grab the phone and get the fuck out of there. There was one good little jump, and the thing is, it could be argued even if she went down there, she'd be, attacked. But here's somebody who's clearly tormenting her, and from then on, I agree with Ian. It started to feel rushed. The hospital scene when he's knocking down guards left and right was kind of like, all right, what you were hoping not to see in a film that started as strong as this was. And I kind of thought,
I agree with that.
And I thought the ending was kind of a cop-out. Like I told Beth early on, I'm like, it's his brother. And, you're right. But then they have this whole thing where you're not really sure if his story was true or not. And she ends up killing him, which would have been a satisfying ending. Hold on a second. It would have been a satisfying ending if they had laid the groundwork for it to be kind of a richer, if they'd kept the film more of a gray area. Like, if they really did walk the line, whether this was in her head or if he was really doing this, and there being a suit, if they had kind of established that at some point, there's a lot more that could have gone into this film to make that ending work. But as it stands now, I agree with you guys. A 2. It's not going to be a strong 2. It's going to be a 2.
I have to address that. I highly disagree that I think it would have been stronger if you didn't know whether it was in her head or not. The entire point of this is that she's being gaslit. If you thought that she was gaslighting herself, that would not have been a strong ending to this movie.
No. My whole point is, if you were going to have the ending the way it was, what I'm saying is, I felt that the ending was a cop-out. I kind of felt like they wanted their cake and eating it too. My whole point
is, wanted her not to kill him, or what do you mean? I don't know what you mean.
I mean, I felt like it was too simplistic, that it was her brother, but he had the guy tied up in the thing. It would have been more effective if it was her brother and he was dead.
His brother? No, it would not have. That would have ruined the entire point of this movie. The whole point of this movie is that she's getting gaslit by her boyfriend. If it was his brother, it would have been like, oh, gaslighting doesn't exist. It was just his brother being a fucking dickhead murderer. That would have ruined this entire movie if it was his brother.
And they had their cake and ate it too. They had the dickhead brother and they had him.
Right. What they wanted to do was like like give you that little throw off moment. Like you can't ever make it him. Like I never thought for a second it was his brother. I don't know if you guys did.
Yes,
but like
I called it.
it can't
eventually.
possibly be
because
him.
it was
ultimate murderer.
Scooby-Doo logic there. He had certain sentences he said which painted him as guilty.
Yeah, but
there's certain scenes in this. That's the thing is, the problem I have with it is not necessarily what Chris is saying. It's the fact that they handled the trauma of a woman in an abusive relationship so well for the first half hour, 40 minutes. And I don't know if they knew how to handle the actual gaslighting. And also the fact is there's a lot of logical problems with this, like him sitting around in a jail cell for 24 hours waiting for the cell doors to open so they can get out of there. There's a lot of like weird logical for his actual actions as the Invisible Man. Like he's spending I would love to watch a movie of him just waiting around for 12 hours for something he set up to actually work.
What do you mean when she's locked up and he's in the room with her?
Yeah, he can't leave.
But I don't think
until the door opens. Like that's how jail cells work.
Yeah,
like
I don't think you actually like. Do you? I don't remember now. Maybe, but like, do you find out that he's actually in there?
Yeah,
that's like.
Yeah, he says something to her. That's where he finally like says like a word like surprise or whatever he says.
Oh yeah.
Text.
He's sitting in that jail cell until the doors open. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
I think it would have been a more interesting thing if they had never said that he was in there. Then it shows that like he is actually fucking with her head. You never actually know if he's in there or not, but to her, he's always in there. You know, like that's what I think. That's how the movie should have gone. In terms of that.
Would have been more interesting, but that's not what they did. I guess.
But that's kind of what I'm saying is because first of all, I think the film did not need to be 2 hours. And that's where I think a lot of the problem lies. I felt like towards the end we got padding. And the problem is they never really played as much into that, is this real or is this in her head? You know, because if they'd went with that a little farther and then had the ending be the attic scene where where there is that confrontation, if you kind of kept it a slower pace, a shorter movie, and then had that, it would have been a tighter film. And the reason I say, and I think maybe for different reasons, the whole cake and eat it too, is because I don't really know if they, I agree with Ian, I don't know if they really know how to handle or sustain the gaslighting part of it and to really deal with the trauma they had set up. And they kind of couldn't decide on an ending. And I felt like they gave both endings for no reason at all. I'm just saying that this film really needed to simmer on the back burner a little more.
I mean, I don't agree with that. I think that there was definitely a reason for it. I think that the idea of having him setting up his brother was because it's just not like it's just this whole series of him
the Batman
setting up ways, like whether or not it's realistic or not is another story, but like it's all a series of ways for them to show that he is like trying to make you feel crazy by setting up a scenario whereby there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, but that's not what you like, that's not what it actually is. Like he's trying to explain away something. Like it's really just this like way overblown version of like what gaslighting is, and that's what they're trying to do. And like, yeah, maybe you can have an issue with the fact that they overblew or they like really exaggerated like what would happen in a situation like this, but I don't think you can say that it was for no reason. Like it was clearly there for that specific reason to show that that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I get. Again, I'm gonna split the difference with you guys. I'm gonna use one thing that Ian has said on a review that we've done, and one thing about a movie that I say to you guys off cast a lot that we haven't done. So it's the Sunshine / Blade Runner like sort of issue to me, right? The first 35-45% of the movie is solid, set up really well, and it becomes like devolves into like a lesser version of itself as a horror movie.
It is. You're absolutely correct about the Sunshine Effect here.
So that all I'm saying, that's where I'm going to score it like an all right 2 at best, but that's why. Cool.
I second Ian. The sunshine thing is.
Actually, it was my idea, but sure, credit to Ian.
I said I'm seconding Ian
Okay.
in that applauding Scott for bringing up sunshine. However, the more we talk about it, the more I'm bringing the more we talk about it, the more I'm starting to wonder if my plot should go down to a 1. So maybe I should leave it at a 2 and continue on unless anybody has anything to say, because the more we're talking about, the more I'm convinced they didn't know what to do with the second half of this movie. And
He's lucky his cell phone didn't go off before she called it. If they did, they would hear her vibrating in the attic.
Yeah.
The entire family would have been home, and
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, let's move on. All I'm saying is like I said, Chris, on the outset, 1.5, 0.75, rounded up to like, a good enough 2, and because of what I just said. So.
all right. And from that, we'll go on to Steve-O with the theme.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this like somewhat throughout, you know, since the moment that we did the log line. You know, it's gaslighting the movie. It's all about that, and I think it's, you know, like, yes, it's a very Blumhouse horror extreme
take on that
of like what it is, but like, you know, I think it does a fairly good job of like describing the emotional state of somebody who's dealing with something like this, and like saying, oh, you like or perhaps are acting, you know, quote unquote crazy because you're being made to feel like you, like the things that you're experiencing aren't real, and like the things that you're experiencing aren't what is it real life, when in actuality they are, and you're just being told the opposite. And I think that this film does a pretty damn good job showing that in terms of what goes on with her, and you know, obviously you're not going to have an invisible person cut your sister's throat and frame you for it in front of an entire restaurant usually, but I mean, I don't know what people's experiences are, but like you know, it can be like something like that, where it's like something that you know you are being blamed for was not something that you did and was not your intention. Like, I think the email that he sends her sister is actually a really good version of this, because shit like that does happen. And like, you know, somebody else sends someone an email or impersonates you in some way, and it's hard to come back from that. It's hard to explain that away, even if you legit say it wasn't you. That doesn't mean that, like, if someone has made you out to seem unbalanced or unreasonable, then the person that you're trying to explain this to may think, hey, you know, that was just done while you were being,
they're gonna question it,
fucking crazy or whatever, you know, like, and I think that is the main thrust of this movie, and I think it does a pretty good job with that. So I'm probably gonna give it a 1.
Yeah, I don't much more to add. I'm definitely giving themes a 1, and that like, and as you mentioned that the first about 35-40 minutes, right? Elizabeth Moss does a really good job of like being traumatized in this very abusive and like unhealthy relationship, and like that sets it up. And yes, while like it might have devolved plot wise and like maybe other question wise as we get to, I think that still stands as the focal, you know, thematically focal point, focus on point here. And I think it carries itself through it, as you like to say, Sivo. The through line always is there, and I think that works in the film's favor. So yeah,
I agree.
I'm giving it a 0. I'll tell you why. Because I felt like the ending left me completely unsatisfied. I felt like there's a lot of potential dealing with the PTS this woman had, and I kind of felt that I don't feel that when we got to the ending, if there was, I felt there were.
it wasn't earned.
Yeah, I don't feel the meal was rich enough. I feel like there were scenes missing, and however I was wavering on this, the more I thought about the plot, I'm kind of like, you know what, this is where I'm going to downgrade it because I don't think it followed through on the promises and the setups it made. I'm sorry, but by the end of the film, I just wanted it to end, but I didn't really have any sympathy for her. Whatever groundwork they laid, I felt that they blew it in the third act. So I'm giving it a 0.
I don't know, like I kind of see it. I'm sticking with a 1, but like I definitely agree, Chris, that the ending was a total cop out, like just lackluster, just fell flat. But I still think like what they were going for, and again, like 2/3, like 75% of it thematically for me worked because of what we just said. So like while it might have like crossed the finish line strongly, I think the intent and the way it was at least carried through and portrayed worked for me. But I'd see your angle actually, and like it's a good
Chris, I almost completely agree with your angle. However, I actually think it's the strength of Elizabeth Moss's performance that she carries this entire movie. And I think the strength of her performance, even if the ending could have been better, I think she carries the weight of that trauma, even if the film isn't up to her standards of acting. So I'm sticking with my 1, but like Scott, I agree with a lot of what you just said.
Like Chris, you're saying it's like a caricature of this thing, right? But I still think like that's an important thing to talk about. And the movie, like, it might have exaggerated, of course, like parts of it, like but it's still grounded in reality enough for me to give it credit. So that's all. But I do like your take.
You guys said over to protagonist. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But yeah, in all fairness, this is when you weigh, for me in my head, if I weigh everything out, give my scores, I'm going to give this one a 0.
Yep.
Which moves me to antagonists. So given the ending, I'm not really quite 100% sure how to take it, but let's just say the antagonist is Aiden, because whether or not he's there physically, whether or not to whatever extent he's pulling the strings, to Elizabeth Moss's character, to her performance, he's always there with her, no matter what happens, no matter what the ending, whatever the revelation with her brother or whatever happens at the ending, he's always there.
Adrian, by the way. Sorry.
Did you say Aiden? Oh shit, that's my nephew. All right.
Either one.
No, but the thing is, he's always there. He is the specter in the room, alive or dead. He's always there. So I'm gonna definitely give him a 1.
No, you're absolutely right. And like it was funny because not funny, but I actually was wavering on this question, and I was gonna wait to see like what one of you said. I think that actually is gonna sway me because I was like, yeah, but like you're right, like he is always antagonizing her no matter what, like whether the specter of him, whether she thinks he's alive or dead, and like quickly figures out or like at least believes, rightly so, that he is and is doing his nefarious like pulling the strings behind her, messing with her. So yeah, I think that's going to sway me for a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's the case. For me, that's strongly tied into themes.
No, you're certainly right, Thibault, yeah.
But like, you're absolutely right. He is always the specter of the antagonist is always there. She never feels safe throughout this entire movie until the very end, obviously. But like, that's I think what this was going for, and I think it accomplished it pretty well.
Very much like you, Chris, in the last one, where I think it accomplished what it wanted to do with themes, especially in the third act, and the reveal that there were 2 killers all along.
It's Old Man Withers and his brother.
Yeah, Adrian. It's Adrian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tom, I believe, is the brother.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian and Tom didn't work for me. It worked for me in the first part, but there was diminishing returns. It got really silly at points, and it worked as a psychological thriller. It didn't work as an action horror. And
both you're saying,
and this is So I'm going to give it a 0 for wasting, I think, a great villain.
I knew it. I knew you were
Okay.
going
Does that mean you're flipping, Chris?
No, I'm going to stay with it because, to be honest with you, before I started talking, I was going to give this a 0. So I'm going to give, like I said, I kind of gave a lot of my ire from the plot and antagonist to themes. So in all fairness, because of Elizabeth Moss's performance, that is the reason this thing squeaks to a 1. That's all I'm going to say about it. Because I felt him with her the entire time. Whatever fault this movie has, you're absolutely right, Ian, when you said before, she's the one who carries all the stress, the themes, whatever. So thematically it didn't work. Adrian?
Yes, Adrian.
As her nemesis worked for me, but I'm like, Ian's going to split the difference on this one. I bet he's going to give this a 0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's 1s and 0 for Ian. And Ian, why don't you talk about the protagonist?
Well, hopefully I can stop showing up to these and you can just read my mind for what I'm going to do. But I actually thought Elizabeth Moss is why this movie works at all. She does a phenomenal job. She portrays the emotions very realistically. You feel in moments of joy, you feel in moments of panic, and the moments of distress. She has a wide range of emotions, and she has a lot to carry in this movie. And I think that this is the strongest part of this film. And if you're ever going to watch it for any reason, it should be to see her performance in this. So I'm going to be at a very strong 1.
I mean, yep, I'm not going to add much. She's by far the highlight. And like you said, does everything. Like, her range is excellent. She carries it and does a great job with it. And yeah, F&A, 1.
Yeah, pretty much that. We've talked about her throughout the first 3 questions.
Around.
So, this is almost the gimme, I think, at this part. Like, Elizabeth Moss does an amazing job as Cecilia. And, yeah, I mean, she is the draw of this movie and does a great job. So it's a easy 1 for me.
I have nothing to add. 1. So Scott, that moves to supporting character with you.
This one's another bit of an iffy one, but I guess in the way I was leaning for a 0 previously, I might be leaning on a 1 for this. There's not many, and I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't even know the actors' names who played like James, her friend, and his daughter and her sister.
Aldous Hodge was James.
Okay.
Storm Reed is Sydney.
Sweet name.
His daughter, and then her sister was Harriet Dyer as Emily Cass.
And I guess Tom as well, like Adrian's brother, I guess. And that's like kind of it. Like the rest are all like sort of random faces, like
What, security guard number 7?
Stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Security guard. The 8th guy that Adrian took down in the suit in the fucking wing was better than the rest. Like, Jesus, what do you want me to say? But I actually did think, like, yeah, to be fair, they did give James and his daughter like a decent amount of characterization, and as well as her sister, and like even like you said, Steve, like the email thing, like that Adrian sends on on her behalf that splits them apart. And then, like, I think maybe this might go to style, but so that estranges them, right? I think Emily was her sister's name in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was like, fuck you. You sent me this email. You said you want to see me again, like this and that. So finally, like later on, about half an hour later, Elizabeth Moss's character, Cecilia, invites her. She's like, please, I need your help. Can you please meet me in a public space? Like, we'll go out to dinner or whatever. And that's when Adrian sets up, like, he in the Invisible Man suit, slits Emily's throat and like frames Cecilia for it.
Like in the middle of a crowded restaurant, which is weird.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like going back to the themes, like the gaslighting thing. But all I'm saying is, like, I think that was a good character. Like, if that was the final characterization, like their final interaction, I think it was pretty solidly done. So, like, having now talked it out to myself, I think I might lean towards like a solid, like, decent enough 1 for the small, limited but well done side characters that were in the film.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. I like the side characters in this movie. I thought they did a pretty good job. What I will say is that dinner meeting with her sister while it was, I don't know, I like whatever it was, it felt very like none of this characterization was on her sister before. It was like, tell us what sister's all about in this conversation, and not we didn't see it at all. Like that was the biggest. I honestly, up until the throat slitting scene, which was like just interesting visual effects, I guess, and like visceral shit, but like I really that scene I was kind of like, yeah, this is all cool, but you should have done this like through her characterization throughout the movie, not in this one scene telling us about how badass she is.
Well,
like
that's a nitpick I have about the plot, and actually, Sivo, it also goes to dialogue. So I'll speak about that specifically as well. But I mean, I agree with you to an extent, but more to come when we get to that question.
I actually really liked the. Here's the interesting thing is I really liked the characterization that was being done with her sister before that moment, which all didn't really have much to do with what she was talking about and how she was describing her sister at that
jarring.
dinner.
I agree, yes.
But I thought that it was being well done before that, and I agree. I think James and Sydney, the father and daughter that she was staying with, I thought they were good characters. So overall, I'm going to give supporting characters 1, but I did have that issue with the way that they scripted that part out. So yeah, that's me.
I actually gave a lot of damns about Cop Dad and his daughter.
Yeah.
And I would have been very upset if they, which rarely in a horror film like this am I like looking at supporting characters and worrying about their futures. The actor who plays James has a lot of charisma to him.
Aldous Hodge, keep an eye out for this guy.
He did a phenomenal job at this. So yeah, I'm going to give it a strong 1 as well.
Yeah.
Evo, I love that dinner scene, whatever it was. That was a great comment. But Aldous Hodge, we first saw him in Supernatural way back when he was like 20 years old. Yeah, I've seen him in this.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, but he will be in another movie we're going to be reviewing very shortly, One Night in Miami. So he's going to be in that.
No, but I agree with you. I was biased towards the actor anyway, but I agree with Ian. I gave way too much of a shit about James and his daughter. I mean, really, I would have been upset too. When I thought that James had died in that hallway, I was quite upset. So because of the strength of those two characters, I'm definitely giving it a 1.
All right.
So that's 1s everywhere for supporting, right?
Yep. And Steve-O, that's to you with dialogue.
Dialogue's an interesting one. I just mentioned a scene where dialogue didn't really work for me, right? It was a lot of like exposition, tell, don't show, and that on that scene, and
others too. And
there were others like that. There were scenes of good dialogue too. Like, don't get me wrong, I thought there was some good dialogue in this.
Can you name one seriously? Like, what interactions you thought was like solid in terms of dialogue? Can you recall?
Yeah, I liked her initial scenes with her sister. I liked her initial scenes with James, actually. Like the like getting to know you type of stuff, or not even getting to know you, but like we've been around for like, and we're trying to grow type of scenes. Like when he's trying to convince her to go out and get the mail, stuff like that. I liked they had like an easy chemistry in those scenes, I think. And like, I thought that was pretty good, but there were those moments of like, not cringiness, but like fringing on cringe.
No, Steve-O, stilted, like kind of woodenness stuff to it.
Yeah, well, not even necessarily that, because usually Elizabeth Moss was in it, and like she never really feels stilted, but like just like you could tell that this wasn't like this feels weird or like wrong for this moment in the movie, or like, you know, there were just those moments. So I'm probably gonna end up giving this a 0 for dialogue. It's not the worst dialogue I've ever heard by a mile, but like it's certainly not great, and had its moments of like, just, if I'm ever questioning why you put like a scene of dialogue, like not even a line, but like a scene of dialogue into a movie, that probably means I should give it a 0. So I'm gonna go with a 0, but there are those moments of pretty good stuff in here too. I will say that, but yeah, I'm probably gonna side on a 0 unless somebody has a really good argument.
No, I mean I mostly follow suit, and like since it was on you first, like you took a number of my points, but I'm just gonna back them up. That like yes, there were a few moments like in this case mathematically I would say like maybe 70-30 at best, 30% like okay, like fine, like good, but there were times like I said to myself like who wrote like that's a weird line. I did not like that line, and also other parts. Maybe like 4 or 5 times I was like, well, I guess it's just the back exposition time, I suppose, right? Like, and that's not a good sign, as you said. So all that again is also evidence, and I back it up to probably give it a 0, unless you guys, the rest of you two, have an amazing argument against it.
It is really a tale of two movies, isn't it? Like the first act, really good character work, really detailed exploration of trauma, and then you get dialogue like your Thorazine or whatever it is deprives me, and also did you know that you're pregnant? I'm what?
Totally called that, by the way.
So I'm probably going to give it a 0 as well. If they had stuck with the guy who was making the first half of this movie, it would have been great.
All right, so I'm going to give my score because what I'm about to say is going to bleed over into themes, which is mine. So
Themes?
Sorry.
How dare you?
Sorry.
Themes is mine. Don't try to take it.
You can have the themes, buddy. No, but it's going to bleed over into style. So I'm going to give, for everything you guys said, I'm going to give dialogue a 0. And this is, I mentioned this before with the movie with Tom Holland. Where less was
devil all the time, Chris.
Yeah, devil all the time. Where less was more. The dialogue in the first act was very earnest, and what you would hope to see in this film. And I agree with you, Steve-O. When you're sitting there and you're wondering why is this scene of dialogue happening, not a good sign. But I think, and this is where I'm gonna give the point to style, is that because of Elizabeth Moss, and I think we can't stress how much she carried this film, but less was more. Because the dialogue from this attic on was all exposition or explanation or red herring dialogue, and I don't think any word out of anybody's mouth was effective the second half of the movie. However, excuse me, I felt that the nonverbal stuff. I read a lot of what was going on because of Elizabeth Moss. I thought that these scenes were well crafted. I thought, like, visually it was everything you wanted and hoped it would be, despite the action. The way the package was delivered, I thought was effective. I quite liked the score. Cinematography, all that really worked for me. So I'm going to give this a pretty strong 1.
All right, so that was your analysis.
Scott, if I may, really quickly before I forget, I just need to. I really, and maybe it's a function of Chris, like you not exactly like you like seeing this movie and not like knowing what it should have or like what you want it to be exactly, but like you have at 3 different points that it said it's too long, it's missing scenes, and less is more for it.
But that's true.
You want it to be more or less?
More of some parts of it, less of others. Like, I get what you mean.
More substance, less padding. Let's put it that way.
More of the first half of the movie, Steve, more of the first third, and less of what happened in the latter third. Like, I get what he means, and not confused by it. So, Chris, was that your analysis of style then?
Yes.
Yeah, but let me kind of explain, like the whole hospital scene where the Invisible Man is throwing guards around and the whole thing in the rain. The thing in the rain was an interesting thing to watch, but with regard to plot, it didn't really work for me. With regard to theme, it didn't really add anything, but stylistically, I have to give it points because it was well crafted.
No, I feel you. I don't want to. So, all right, I do because I meant to maybe mention earlier. So, we did do the original Invisible Man, just as a quick plug for us, a year or two ago when we were doing the original like monster movies. And in that movie, Claude Rains' plan was to derail all the trains. Like he had some grandiose plan. In this film, maybe I should have mentioned his antagonist. In this one, Adrian's plan is just to mess with his girlfriend because she wants to leave him because he's an abusive dick. But anyways, one of you mentioned Hitchcockian at some point. And I do think there were some good Hitchcockian like kind of shots, like the claustrophobia. You felt like I did like that throughout. Chris, the soundtrack was like all right, like it was like standard horror fare to me, like all like blaring like when shit happened. Like I don't really notice any like songs or anything, so it neither detracted but neither added anything to me really. But overall, the cinematography, yes, was pretty damn solid, and I had no problem with it. In fact, I think it did its job more than it didn't. And yeah, if where the plot and the script fleshed out maybe a bit more, we could have seen more of like the better parts, as you guys said. But either way, I'm giving Style a solid 1.
I am giving Style a very strong 0. Because there are way too many logical inconsistencies with the villain of this work. And the fact that the thematics are so important, are so lofty in what they want to say, the fact that I was confused, I found parts silly, and I found like the logic very inconsistent. I thought it actually did was in a lot of ways a disservice to the themes, and the fact that his suit malfunctions when the plot needs it to, and doesn't when it does it. It's I was watching this film, and I actually felt that they should have switched scenes around, because it feels like that scene when she goes back to the that should have like it didn't seem to have that that thread necessarily. And yeah, I did detract thing off plot for that, but I'm also the consistency of it being a horror film, because this is not Jason X, where I can forgive Jason for appearing in a hallway. But this is attempting to tackle a serious issue and has the logic of fine. Not Jason Takes Manhattan. I'm like, I don't want to see Jason Take Manhattan logic applied to something important. So yeah, I'm going to give this a big fat 0.
I get what you're saying there, Ian. I am nowhere near as harsh on it as you in terms of that. I think I'm probably going to end up giving this a 1. But point well taken. I agree. Like there is like this weird, and it's I feel like what it is they just take different, as the film progresses, they take different genres and apply the logic of that genre to that specific scene or whatever.
I
don't think it's that deep.
No, I don't think they were trying to do that, but like it feels like a psychological thriller in the beginning, and then
it's out to be in the end, right?
It's like a straight up like gore fest horror film, and then at some point it's a slasher, like 90s slasher type feel, and at some point like it just goes through all these different like feels as a movie, and it doesn't have one coherent vision necessarily. I think that anyone, to be honest, I think that they do all of those different things pretty well. Like you could say like that hospital scene, you didn't like it, but I thought it was like for just a straight up like horror, like
it worked in Terminator 2.
Halloween did it.
Yeah,
it was pretty good. Yeah, but not as well as that cinematically by any means. You know, like. Or what are you talking about? Halloween 2?
No, the first Halloween, like
when they're in the fucking hospital.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Halloween 2.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Yes, Halloween 2. Then yes.
Yeah, so certainly this hospital scene was better than every scene in Halloween 2. But like in terms of just like a gore like slasher type scene.
But we're also not discussing Laurie Strode's post-traumatic stress disorder from being
Of course,
gaslit by
that's what
Michael
the
for
movie's supposed to be about. What are you talking about? We are discussing that in Halloween 2.
yeah, but it's
We
not
did.
to the
It's not-
level of
it's not-
seriousness that this takes it.
You're right. You're right.
And you said tonal whiplash earlier. This is where I think the tonal whiplash comes from. That it's weird about genre changing. In a sense.
It is that, and like
it didn't work for me. It might work for other people.
it is that, and I got that out of it. It gave me like minor annoyance like once or twice, but for the most part, I was alright
with that.
And I, like you said, Chris, I did enjoy the score. I enjoyed the SFX that they employed in the movie. I thought that the cinematography was really well done. Like the shots looked really good for the most part. So overall, I'm gonna give it a 1. But I did have to like discuss that little like thing that like bugged me a couple times, and I could see it really bugging other people like you, Ian, and like I get that. So
I just have 2 things to say. Number one, the hospital setup was not quite as stupid as Halloween 2, where you had like 2 doctors, 2 nurses, a ward full of babies, and 2 EMT drivers.
That's why I love it. That's why it's better than Invisible Man. Anyway,
No,
Chris.
this one,
At least Halloween 2 is logically consistent.
yeah, exactly. In this one, you had someone locked in the cell with a big window, next to it, and a bunch of security guards and no other doctors. But I am going to say this,
A
Ian.
clown car full of
so many security guards. That is true.
You guys noticed that, right? Okay.
Ian,
But they always worked in twos. They came around the corner 2 at a time.
like Noah's Ark to the slaughter. I'm going to say, Ian, you changed my mind on something, and Ian, you reinforced the fact that, Ian started the ball rolling and got me to switch one of my scores, and Steve-O, you helped back it up. So I'm going to stick with 1s for theme, but knock my plot down to a 1. You guys, between the two, Ian, and between your final, Steve, I don't know what it is about your arguments, but you're always sealed.
Hold on. You said theme again. I assume you mean style and not theme.
All right, I'm going to give style a 1.
Okay.
And knock plot down from 2 to 1. So I'm now giving plot a 1.
I feel like you've been searching for a reason to do that all podcast.
No, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, this movie is really irritating me now. I'm getting angrier at this fucking movie right now. The more we talk about it, the less I'm liking it.
You guys are fucking gaslighting yourselves, and I guess we're all gaslighting each other.
The more we talk about it, the more the cream is floating to the top.
Yeah. To be fair, I've been attempting this entire time to get you to drop down to a 1. So
Mission accomplished. So all right. I'm sticking with the 1 for themes, but actually, God damn it, you got me doing a 1 for style. But the only thing I want to add is like there are like 2 or 3 references, Chris, you might have liked this, that like to the actual original, where like the hat, like there's like a mannequin or something like that, and somebody's in the hospital, she sees them like wrapped up in the bandages. So like I kind of like that, like it seemed like they had to have thrown that shit in there.
Reference
that was fine. And the rest of the cinematography, as I already said, is fine too. So solid 1 for me on this one as we devolved into it.
And that leaves Ian with recommendation. Ian, do you recommend this?
not really. I didn't hate this movie. I was disappointed with it, and I honestly feel I could have spent my time with doing better things, and I don't want to come out of a film feeling like that. Well, there are people who love this film. It's got 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. I'm not one of those. I'm one of the 10%.
Yeah, I'm going to forget this film. It was neither amazing nor so shitty that it's memorable because of that. It was all right, and like almost all of the positivity, like is Elizabeth Moss's, like give her so much credit. Everything else was like okay at best, or at least was so sine wavy that it sort of cancels itself out. So I'm going with it like maybe a small, a lesser 0, but and I also have no desire to see it again. I'm never going to be like, hey, if Man's on again. I'm gonna watch it. Nope. I'm gonna watch something else instead. And if somebody asks me, should I watch the 2020 Invisman? Like, I'd be like, nah, you could skip it. You're fine. So,
I actually think this is a pretty solid movie. I'm going to give it a 1, and I know a lot of people that I would recommend this to. So that being said, I think that the 1 is the right call for me. But I get where you guys are coming from, and yeah, I'm going to give it a 1.
Okay. Go on.
I was saying, it's not even good for a bad movie night to laugh with your friends because it's so weighty.
It's not bad.
That you don't want to poke, or you feel bad poking fun at it. It's kind of depressing and logically inconsistent. I don't know.
Yeah. I am not going to recommend this film. I was wavering before, but as I said before, the more we're talking about it, the more it, as we all said, did not live up to its potential. It could have been a lot more. And as Scott said, I am going to forget about this tomorrow. I'm not going to recommend it to anybody. And if anybody asks me, I'll be like, Elizabeth Moss was great. So I'm going to give it a 0.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like as far as I'm like, I mean, I know you're working out the scores. That means like this must be a wildly inconsistent. Like the scores must be a weird range, just like the film itself.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, to break it all down, the scores were there's 2 things we agreed upon, all of us, were the protagonists and supporting characters. Initially, we all gave the plot a 2, but the more we talked about this film, Ian and Steve-O actually convinced me through their arguments for or against to knock my plot down to a 1.
Yeah.
Themes didn't work for me. Dialogue didn't work for any of us. And Steve-O is basically the only one who recommended this.
What does that
Basically.
mean? So what do we give it, Chris? Like,
Other than 9 out of 10 people.
What do we individually give it score-wise?
Okay, so Scott, you gave it a 7. Steve-O, you gave it an 8. Ian and I gave it 5s, which leaves us with an aggregate score of 6.25. So take that for what you will.
Sure, that's fine. That's about right to me. 6.25. Fucking A.
At this point in time, we're just knocking down security guards in a hallway. So
Yeah. Yep. Indiscriminately, with no rhyme or reason, and they keep coming. So whatever.
Well, does anybody have anything to add to this movie or Elizabeth Moss's performance?
Yeah, it was great. That's the only reason I would say ever check it out. Watch the first 40 minutes of this film, and then you're done.
Well, I'd say watch the Claude Rains one. I've been Chris Morgan, and I've been here tonight with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Cecilia, you're breaking my heart.
Hello.
And I will vanish into the night myself.
And Stephen Ormosi.
Yeah, goodbye. I'm disappearing behind this
Vale of Tears.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or Mott's?